Yes,
Yeah.
awesome, awesome, awesome. All right. As Samaya mentioned, my name is Angelina Garcia, and I started out as a graphic designer. I moved to QA, and then I landed in UX. So we're going to talk about how I've navigated that path and um, catchy little catchphrase. Thank you, ChatGPT. From print catalogs and coffee pots to design systems and dev stand-ups. So kind of just walking you through all of that and a little bit about myself. If I can do the screen. I'm a dork, so I do a lot of different things. Here I'm traveling with my sister, my friend. The picture kind of in the middle, the bad selfie with the blue shirts is from actually a local conference here in Raleigh, where I'm located, called UX Y'all, which is a conference put on by the local UXPA, which is a Triangle UXPA chapter. The photo with the student in the background, kind of facing the front. And I have some drawings near me. My sister works she's a school counselor for the local school county system here. I was asked to come in by the art teacher to teach students how to do art critiques. Art critiques are hard. And you kind of have to learn how to take those in, which will apply later for UXers. And then there's my puppy dog, Mr. Cyrus, who is currently sleeping behind me. And yeah, that is a little bit about me. So we're going to talk about how I started, the skills that carried me through, embracing change, owning my value, and do a little recap at the end. And I'll make sure there will be room for questions as well. So the starting point. So like I said, I started out as a graphic designer, even though my original intent was actually to start to be a photographer. I had the dream of becoming a traveling photographer, and seeing the world, working for National Geographic or something like that. But growing up as a child of immigrants, they wanted me to be more realistic, so they encouraged me to do something a little bit more practical. So I ended up in computer science. I had a relative who was in information systems, and he thought I had kind of had an analytical brain a little bit. So he's like, "Oh, I think you might like this. Give it a try." So as I was looking through schools, finding something that suited me, had a computer science program, but also had maybe a photography arts division that I can still kind of keep that, in the back of my mind. Always had options. So I went to a liberal arts school, declared my major computer science way too early. The benefits of having to go to a liberal arts school is that I had to take art credits, no matter what they were, something. It was either 6 or 9, maybe. I don't quite remember what it was. So I had to find an art class. Of course, photography was always full. Everybody loved photography, and this was, film cameras, going into the dark room, developing with the very smelly chemicals, which I still do love doing when I can. But yeah, I just flipped through the course catalog when I was in school, and mostly it was a physical catalog, which is ages me quite a bit. But I was looking for an art course to fill the time while I was on the wait list for a photography course, and the class was titled Intro to Graphic Communications. I had no idea what that meant, even though I kept reading and rereading the description in the course catalog. But I figured, hey, it involves computers, art. I can do that. I'm always been intimidated by drawing and things like that. So I really, really like the idea of being able to do something creative with a computer. So I kind of fell in head first. Whenever anyone would ask me, why are you taking that? I'm like, sure, it makes sense. Why not? And then, like I said, I completely fell in love. And I decided to change my major, go to the art department, and go into graphic design. My practical family was like, what is that? And I'm like, you see that magazine or that pamphlet or the calendar that you write your dates on. That's what a graphic designer does. Any printed materials, whether it was a professional or not, doesn't matter, but someone who designed that was doing graphic design. So they're like, oh, you can do that anywhere. So I was like, yes, let's do it. Getting a little bit of encouragement and backing on that was really, really great. So I went through the course, graduated, and I was very lucky. I was able to find a job right when I got out of college, which actually was someone who worked for the company, graduated from my college with the same program, with the same degree. So, I'm one of those people that knew somebody that didn't know I knew somebody, but, flagged my resume and the other qualifying measure that they were also looking for a bilingual graphic designer, and I spoke Spanish. The company was a sporting goods company that sold primarily through catalogs in both English and Spanish for soccer primarily, which is, a big market in very many places. So we wanted to make sure that our catalogs, sounded as well as they were laid out in both languages. So I kind of came on. I learned a lot of things about office dynamics, working with different teams. In college, you kind of have a very small siloed section where you have to do everything. But this was my first time working with the actual photography department, copywriters, editors, the printing of the proofs, and kind of going around in circles and seeing this piece of paper completely scribbled on, and for many different reasons. And that was a very big learning experience for me. So that job, in many ways, um, I learned about really tight deadlines. You can't miss a print deadline, especially when you're dealing with an outsourced printer. It could cost you millions. So deadlines was something that I really learned. Um, I also learned a very important a couple unspoken rules about office life that some of you may know by now. I didn't, so it was something new. If you finish the coffee, don't leave the coffee pot empty. Make sure you refill it. If not, you get a lot of bad side eye. Avoid smelly lunches at your desk. Nothing worse than someone microwaving fish, in the middle of the office. And as well as business casual means something different for everyone. I never really understood why some environments had really strict dress codes. So going into, working for a sporting goods company but still wearing slacks was a little weird sometimes. But at first that was my own personal, like, you have to be a professional. It's like, oh, right, the clothes really don't matter. As long as I'm covered, I'm still doing my work appropriately. Those were the kind of things that I kind of went through and learned. So kind of, summing up a little bit, going from photography to UX, it was a long journey, and I'll go through the QA part as well. But a lot of the main things I learned was that I had been doing graphic design, to somebody's point earlier, that, UX is kind of everywhere. I absolutely believe that. When I worked in retail, the merchandising, putting on the sales floor, the visuals, how you set up the mannequins, for example, how you walk through the store, that is, UX design, just not in front of a computer. It's called like, merchandising, but you're giving someone an experience, and that's what really defines what user experience is about, not just, the Figma and programs like that. So kind of working through my first job as, working in the catalog company, I went into a startup, and I learned how to wear many different hats. It was very interesting. Had the opportunity, because in startups they can be very small, and you have opportunities to grow and move up very quickly. Within 2.5 years, I went from just a regular old first year employee to a creative director that managed, a teams of 15, sometimes a little bit more, making sure, I was the one responsible to make sure things got to the printer on time, and that kind of direction. But working with a team, I was able to like mentor and understand how that relationship worked. And to what I mentioned earlier about giving critiques and being making sure that the comments were constructive, and so that they can do their work, and really we can all produce something in the end that came out and hopefully was acceptable to the reader in the end. So skills that kind of carried me through as I transitioned from, regular graphic design-ish to into another different role, director, and then into QA. What I really learned was that I already had empathy for users because I worked with a team. I had to manage them, both emotionally sometimes, as well as, in their everyday duties. working with clients, whether they were clients that came on for a little while or our vendors that we worked with, making sure that their print materials were reaching the homes on time, making sure their ads were advertised correctly. Creating templates that in workflows within InDesign was process thinking. I was doing a little bit of mentoring and the problem solving, asking, the why of why things were done in certain ways to really understand, try to fix the old adage of we've always done it this way, but why? Sometimes I'm a 3-year-old, like, why? Until we kind of get to the core of what is really, in the end, in what we're trying to solve, kind of thing. Um, the lessons from my messy middle was when I kind of moved into the role of the startup and wearing so many hats. I learned that, learn to be comfortable with the uncomfortable, which is a very hard thing for a tourist to do. Doesn't like change at all. But I needed to be able to jump in and kind of get in there, and I started doing that as a leader, as a creative director, because I had to go to bat for my team, in many different ways. So I did enjoy working with a team, but being a manager at that time was not really something that I was totally in love with. And as I worked in the office at the time, I usually went in really early and, just chit-chatting with some coworkers that were also early birds. I had the CTO said, "Hey, as we were talking, we're coming to build some things in office now in-house instead of, relying on third-party products. We're finally getting out of the manual system of collecting all of our print materials and kind of getting them out into the world for review." So I was kind of an expert in this thing and I didn't really know it. I became an SME and they were like, "So come on, help us do a little bit of, QA, help us think about how we go, user journeys and information architecture." And those weren't the words I was using at the time, but those were the things that I was already doing and didn't realize it. So kind of moving into the QA world with working with developers was completely new to me. It was kind of scary because that wasn't my expertise. And, developers are the smartest people in the world. They're really not. They Google most of the things that they do, because everybody needs a little help. So I was always afraid to ask questions and kind of do the why that I had been doing before because I was intimidated. But a one-on-one conversation with one of the head developers, he was like, there are no dumb questions. I uncovered a lot of blind spots because I knew the business rules, helped create some of the business rules that, the developers that, we were just hiring had no real basis or context of. And then they could ask me the why of why the business rules existed. And sometimes I could push back on leadership, because I had been around long enough. I had built trust with them. And as I was helping the developers kind of come up and ask the questions, I also was able to build trust with them. And then later with the product managers as they came on. And again, that's when like I said, I wasn't using the right words, but I had realized that I was doing UX the entire time, as, "Hey, move the button over here. This doesn't quite make any sense. I wonder, could we talk about this a little bit?" We did have a official UX designer on board, even though I still didn't know what that meant at that point. But there were a lot of different projects going on. So he would kind of give us the general idea of how to move things along. But devs don't know how to fill in the middle as far as design work goes. They know how to do the logical pieces, but they needed help on some of the more creative elements. And that's another place where I stepped in and being able to have conversations with them and work on something that made sense for both development in real life as well as, the sometimes fictional world of Figma or InDesign at the time. Oh, not InDesign, InVision, I mean. And so, working together was something that carries through no matter what position, industry, role you have. Building trust with your team is very, very important. So as I kind of, yeah, I have notes. I'm a paper and pencil kind of person, don't mind me. So as th so that really that role really helped me embrace change. It helped me find my voice in ways to communicate with people that I wasn't used to. I was used to dealing with art kids. Now I'm dealing with developers and product managers and, clients in a very different way. Um, and so that helped me again, the storytelling part. That's where that was coming in as I was, figuring out how to, reframe my fear as curiosity because I was able to ask the right questions so that when we were presenting something, it made sense. Because, you put a deck in front of someone with too many words, hopefully these aren't too many words, they're either going to zone out or read what's on the screen and not actually listen to you and really what you're trying, the message you're trying to get across. Being ready is no such thing. I focused on the things that I could control in my environment and, which sometimes was massaging relationships, as I mentioned before. So that was really something that I learned to embrace. Absolutely. Even though I still have a hard time doing it, I try the best that I can. But out of all those experiences that came once I started the cohort, that I realized it was a lot of my soft skills that really, really helped me pick up what UX really is. It's, that empathy, the communication between handoffs of developers is very similar to handing off to the printer, making sure the offsets are right, or making sure something isn't falling off the screen or isn't getting cut off because of certain device types. And just really learning the language of UX and understanding how the relationships work. And really finally realizing that design is design. It doesn't matter how it's applied, whether it's print, whether it's, in a physical environment, or it's pixels on a screen. What it really is carrying through those fundamentals that you learned of, setting the expectations and having the user understand through, hierarchy, making sure things are readable. Things that bleed in a print magazine won't have the same effect on a screen. However, for example, thin fonts aren't readable. You have to think about accessibility versus like paper types that bleed through different things. So kind of understanding on how to make adjustments from, the print world into the world of the digital world that I was now kind of coming into. And really, as I worked through that transition, I realized that I have value. I was only really getting in my own way with my, my graphic design background, my mentorship, and being able to work with several different teams. It was an asset. It was something that I realized that I had to stop saying, I'm just a designer. I just kind of do this, or I do QA, but I'm not really that good at it. That's not at all true. I don't know how I managed it, but I never let anyone deploy a bug or brought production down, which if anyone's been in those positions, it's very, very scary. Um, and so as I kind of came into that, learning what I can do, yes, the unicorn title, I really dislike that. So I'm more than so sorry. Apologies for the barking dog. One moment. Apologies. He was looking out the window. I think he saw a squirrel. But yes, I really don't like the term unicorn. And again, I'm more than just a generalist because of those different dimensions. Awesome. You didn't hear the barking. Because I had those different facets of understanding. Yeah, I like the multidimensional generalist. It was something that I came across that I was like, oh, I like that. So I've embraced it and taken it on. And another thing, just be honest. If you don't know something, say you don't know. Find out. Get your be find a way to get your message or point across, even if it's not speaking through a room full of people. Sometimes it's making those with, leveraging those partnerships that you've made to help to find a way for them to help you get that message across. whatever that may be, project dependent or job dependent or that kind of thing, that a lot of a lot of the things we do just don't stand by the whatever title. Someone was also asking about kind of the different titles and doing research on that. They change all the time. Titles sometimes come out of nowhere because they become trendy for whatever reason. Honestly, it's just how you describe what you do. And if you need to adjust titles, as recommended, go through LinkedIn or the job boards or ask for advice. If you know people in the industry, ask us, through the Slack channel, to help you all out with that. But really the biggest thing I learned is that titles really are arbitrary. What's not arbitrary is who you are and what you bring to the table. And that's knowing your value. Understanding who you are is the only way to be able to bring value to any table that you come to. And sorry. And so overall, the biggest thing that yes, we'll share the Slack channel. Samaya, if you can in a moment do that. The biggest things that I took away are there is no right path. Soft skills are always transferable and are not easy to come by. You can always learn Figma. You can always learn how to code. You can always, understand how to use the Miros and Jiras of the world because they are tools. You can do that research, and it's very easy to find so many tutorials on how to use those tools. But soft skills are something you learn throughout life, and you can't really just Google that. They'll tell you the words, but you can't really be empathetic unless you understand what those soft skills are. Um, and everyone has a unique point of view. Everyone brings something different. And as we kind of tell our students and the folks that I mentor through UX Women, is that there are a lot of apps that already exist, but that doesn't mean they can't be made better. What is your take that you think that you can make another product that's even better than it currently is? We have some students that were working on a subscription box. Their take on subscription boxes was absolutely amazing. I always call this out because she was thinking about an underserved market, which is it's hard for non-binary folks to find clothes that they can express themselves with because of the differences in their body type. So this person came from a fashion design background and they thought about this. They thought about this problem and they're like, I can do something about this. So they had a very unique solution to something that has been solved, subscription boxes, clothing subscription boxes. But again, it was that unique take that served someone in an audience in an authentic way. And that's what she brought to the table. That vision, that point of view that made it justifiable that this new subscription box could compete with the Stitch Fix or ThreadUps of the world kind of thing. Um, don't be afraid to own your value. A lot of us have imposter syndrome for a lot of different reasons, and if other people see the value in you, why are you negating that? Don't be afraid to claim it. Believe it yourself. Because sometimes people do blow smoke up places. But overall, they do mean it, especially in a working environment. If you keep hearing it over, you really need to internalize it or fake it till you make it. Either way, at some point, you need to embrace it and believe it because if you don't believe it, nobody else will. Especially as you kind of transfer from position to position or company to company or just, interacting with different people, networking and such, as I mentioned at, the conferences that I've been to. So, you know, being able to understand and put yourself out there, you have to know your value. Um, and community is one of the biggest things that supports you. And whether it's within a job or, outside, whether friends, family, or this community we're currently in as we're talking through, they are the ones that can help you weather the storm, give you advice, especially in this tough market of trying to find a job. You need support. And someone who can, groups of people, or, that can give you advice, or even if it's not advice, it's just, solidarity. Hey, me too. This sucks, because sometimes you just need to vent a little bit. So community will always help you find your way through the chaos of the world that we live in. And the biggest one I always say as well is there are no dumb questions. Even if it's been answered before, maybe the way you ask it has someone thinking about the problem in a different way, or helps move the solutioning a lot of times that can happen, and actually get to the root of the problem. So never be afraid to ask questions, because you just never know what kind of idea or discovery that kind of got lost in the weeds, but because you asked this question, was able to surface to the top and be able to um, improve, or maybe actually help shut down a project, because you asked the right questions, somebody started thinking about it, they're like, oh wait, maybe I see what you're saying, maybe we shouldn't do this. um, is there a way to overcome imposter syndrome? Honestly, it's just starting to believe the things that people tell you. If they tell you, if you hear people over and over, whether it's actual people you work with, family, friends, you're really good at this. I really like what you're doing with this, or, this is really working. Maybe you should, keep talking in front of people. I actually am quite terrified of speaking in front of people. I have terrible stage fright, but I'm still putting myself out there. I've, spoken at with this to this group quite a couple times now, which has been awesome. And they're right there. That's helping overcome imposter syndrome, because I have been invited more than once to speak to a group of people about my experience. I've been asked repeatedly to mentor. So why should I believe that I can't do it when the opportunities keep coming up in the same ways? So really it's not easy. I still have my moments where I'm like, I suck. I can't do this. But recognizing that you're being kind of foolish is part of it, and being able to get through. I don't think it ever really goes away, but if you recognize it in the moment, it might help you identify what it is exactly that is bothering you about this, and maybe you can have a conversation with someone and kind of, um, unpack it, for lack of a better term, so that you can find a way, however it is, to work through. I don't know if you ever overcome, but you work through that current spell of imposter syndrome, because it's always going to come up, unfortunately. For some people, it doesn't, but one of the best phrases I ever heard was, live your life like a mediocre white man, because they always tend to fail up. No matter what, they seem to fail up. And if you kind of take that to mind, it does make you laugh. That's your sister's motto. I'm glad I'm not the only one. I actually took that from a conference that I went to many years ago. Little nugget that I absolutely love, because it does make me laugh. It makes other people laugh, but it also makes you think for a moment. You're like, you know what? I know quite a few of those. I, what would Chad do? I like that. That's great. But yeah, it's kind of, everybody knows at least one mediocre white man that is succeeding right in front of your eyes, and you're like, why? Part of it is they believe in themselves. They know no other way than to believe in themselves. Um, so I've kind of tried to embrace that attitude, which is sometimes faking it until you're like, oh yeah, I have a body of work to prove that I am an expert at this kind of thing that I'm moving through. Um, so yeah, it's a little bit about me. Um, and yeah, I'm absolutely open to questions. Yes, we are all absolutely capable, and absolutely. We just have to find out exactly what it is that will help us over, kind of step forward and push us out there. And like I said, change is scary. It's especially in the world we live in, that's very chaotic, even more chaotic than usual. It is hard to take a chance, to take a risk, but I have to say I'm glad that I did, not just throughout my career, but really with the speaking and the mentoring. There are other th in many ways that help support that actual, professional career. Because that's, giving advice to folks, getting them to on your side or being able to explain, that storytelling part, being able to explain to your mentee how this works without solutioning for them, finding that problem, helping them work through the problem, but not offering too many solutions because sometimes if you don't really understand the problem, you can't you shouldn't be jumping into solutions, which everyone loves to do. But it isn't as fun when you don't actually know the problem that you're trying to solve. So yeah, that's a little bit about me. That was a little bit of rambling, I'm sure. But yeah, I'm happy to take questions or Samaya, if you want to jump in with anything.
No, no, I have nothing to add. I can ask some questions. The chat has been super engaged with
Yeah.
all your comments and they are really, really into it. So I think, yeah, this is an opportunity to invite everyone here to
Yes.
ask questions specifically on the UX job search and transitioning from graphic design and QA and engineering in particular. You've
Mhm.
already heard from Valerie and Velvet and Andrea and Yasmin from different perspectives and different industries. So for our graphic designers here in particular, for our QA folks and our engineers, this is your time to really ask questions and we'll prioritize that.
What did I learn most? That I really knew what I was doing. It was just understanding the language. And again, there's a difference between tools and actual like skills is not quite the right word, but that empathy, you don't realize you have it um, until you really start speaking the language. A lot of people have more empathy than they realize when it comes to products and services. Everyone has an experience, whether good or bad. I oversimplify my job sometimes, explaining it to people so they don't glaze over when they ask what UX is. I'm like, my job is to make sure you don't abandon cart, whether it's a literal cart or a metaphorical cart. If you couldn't complete your task online, then I failed at my job. Another example I love to give is my friend's last name is St. Paul, ST period space PAUL. Oh, the nightmare. Even in 2025 of her filling out a form, you wouldn't think this would be a problem that it does it accept the period? Does it accept a space? Both? Neither? It's a roll of the dice every single form. And it doesn't make sense. It's bananas. As well as like, you know, so yeah, so that's one of the biggest things that I took away from the cohort, I knew more than I thought I did. I found that community, I found that support that could help, prop me up when I needed it, which helped a lot with the imposter syndrome as well. Because, hearing from either other classmates or, a couple, Samaya or anybody else who was teaching the class was like, are you sure you think you don't know what you're doing? I don't know about that. So yeah, that's the difference between learning, what you know versus how you can do it. Maybe that's a better way. How you can do it is how you use a tool, Miro, Figma, Jira, etc. Those are tools you learn how to use to get your message across, but you already know how to deliver that message and learning maybe the terminology is where the gap is for you. Um, certifications are not necessary. If you already have a graphic design background, as I mentioned, design principles are design principles, whether they're for furniture making, graphic design, UX, service design, anything like that. It's still design principles that you're taking to the core, whether it's understanding how to put colors together, accessibility. typography and hierarchy, making sure you draw the eye to the message you're trying to tell, make it compelling, make it quick, make it catchy, make sure the good things are above the fold. So it's kind of, especially if you have a portfolio, how do you put that portfolio together to tell that message that it may not be exactly UX, but it's still design, storytelling, and how that comes forward and translates. How do you navigate application questions about how many years of UX experience what you have? A lot of times I will frame that as instead of UX experience or graphic design experience, been in the design industry. Because again, titles are can be arbitrary, and you applied your design skills in the print industry. Now you're applying your design skills in, for the digital world, whether it's, a SaaS product, a web app, doing research as well. Working with a client in graphic design and trying to figure out, what they actually want in that, catalog that they're trying to put together is the same way as asking research questions during an interview. It's very similar. So a lot of it I try to frame as experience in the design world, working with users, doing a little bit of research. Somebody always laughs whenever I say research, as in the cohort. I love getting research. Just research during that time was not my jam, but I'm so glad. I always say that, she laughs so hard. But I'm glad I had that experience, because I've used it a lot as a multi-dimensional generalist. I've had to use it in my job because, being in a small team at the moment, kind of put, all hands on deck. And it's always nice to have at least a pair of folks doing research interviews. So if you're leading, they're taking notes. Sometimes they can, help you ask questions that, you didn't think of. And I think the biggest takeaway from that kind of research was it's try to treat it as a conversation, instead of like an interrogation, because sometimes research interviews can go that way. So, yeah, that's kind of one of those many things. Sorry, my dog has decided to start chewing on a book. Um, did you have a resume dedicated to just UX and computer graphics separate? I blended them because it's all of those experiences have shaped me into who I am and what I can offer as a UX designer, as someone who's applying their design skills to UX at the moment. All of those have get how they've helped me build empathy and how. So yeah, I made sure that those were in one resume. It's really, again, how you put those words together, how you're using that terminology to tell the story of who you are. We're always telling a story, whether it's about a product or yourself. Um, let's see. As a graphic designer with no UX design jobs on my resume, how do I navigate? Yeah, like I said, it's just design and use it as a design industry term. That way, again, you can kind of start massaging that a little bit. Um, do you think it is possible for someone without graphic design background to land a job in user experience, more of a generalist role, including UI design? Absolutely. I just happen to come from a graphic design background. I actually, as I've kind of learned and met folks in the industry who have been in the UX world for a while, most of them actually don't have a art or design background at all. They come from like human interaction things or research. So that's why I was kind of laughed earlier, mentioning that, I learned the hard way that some folks don't know how to conduct a critique or how to take a critique. And those are some of the folks that I've come across that do not have a design background, that can take things very personally. That's one of the major differences I've noticed. But yeah, no, you don't need to have a graphic design background at all. It's just something that I happen to have. Let's see. Can anyone share tools? Someone's on it. Let's see. I have done 3 internships, and 2 of them are UX internships, and now I work in tech support at a software company. where I've developed strong empathy and problem solving skills. Oh, yes, you can in support. Absolutely. I've even created mock-ups and UX ideas to improve the product. I have a portfolio with 2 case studies and working on a third, and hold a bachelor's in art history and graphic design certification and working on a UX cert. Is this enough? Oh, absolutely. And no, I don't think, um, depending on your how long you've been working as a professional, I would not always recommend starting at the junior level. For example, again, I didn't come into UX right away. I had that design background though, as well as, just working with teams and such, that I was like, oh, I'm a mid-level, right? Somebody was like, absolutely not. You're a senior. I have director in on my resume. So it didn't make sense for me to, put myself down, imposter syndrome again, bringing my value down and saying, well, I'm only. No, I am a senior because of my experiences. So, I would be weary of starting yourself. Kanea, I think that's how you pronounce your name. I'm sorry if I'm butchering your name. I would consider mid-level roles. But again, we have a community that you can, the Slack channel that you can always ask for advice or, sign up for some mentorship on the website so that, we can give you more personalized advice. I did a computer engineering and human interactive design degree. What softwares do you use to make your portfolio, and how to latest AI details? Software to put my portfolio together. My portfolio is currently on Squarespace, my website, but because I'm used to using Photoshop and InDesign and Illustrator, that's kind of how I put my assets together, to put on my website. So I don't have just one tool that I use to put everything together. I have different methodologies to put certain things up and build my case study. Most of it though is built in Squarespace, and then I just, like I said, I provide the visuals and do any customizations, because some of the things I'm like, that doesn't quite work for me. And let's see. Next question. Let's see. I'm actually interested in an overlap between graphic design and UX design and call myself a UX and graphic designer. I have a certification in UX design and pursuing a certification in communication design right now at Mass Art. Woohoo! I'm from New England, Mass Art. That's awesome. Do you also find moments when you describe yourself as both or mentioning that your UX work is guided by your design principles? Any advice on speaking on both? Um, Here's what I would say. What are you going for? When you're applying for a job, is it for a graphic design job or is it for a UX job? If you are applying to different types of jobs, that's where I would have a different resume. I would have a UX resume and a graphic design resume. I have a combined one because I was going for UX and speaking about my design experience. So that's kind of where I would make the differentiation of having more than one resume, guided toward, those specific roles. But yes, if you're going specifically for UX, have that UX resume. If you're going for graphic design, keep that graphic design together. But for sure, if you want something that is in UX but uses your design skills, then I would have one resume with both of those together. Um, any other questions I may have skipped? Let's see. Interactive degree. Da, 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 da. Yes, I answered that one. Do, do, do. Question. Do, 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 do. Let's see. Oh, I have one question here. Thank you for your store. You're very welcome. Absolutely. Always happy to share. As a graphic designer, my only passion is UX. I suffer from analysis paralysis. What should be my main focus driving into UX? Oh, that's a tough one, because it can be so personal. My transition into UX was, I was working with products that, I could help make better. I was seeing things that were in the world, and I'm like, I as a user would be upset having to use this. So how would I make it better to someone's earlier saying that they've created mocks of how to make their product better as they work in support? It's how can I help? And that was my motivation. So yeah, it depends on what really motivates you in general, and then how does that apply to UX? And that was Kim that I was answering. Let's see. Yeah, somebody asked about what I meant by soft skills. I mean, what kind of what I'm doing right now. You know, that's part of a soft skill, telling a story, having people engaged, making people feel comfortable, being able to work cross-functionally with different teams, different temperaments, and being, you know, that empathetic person that listens but also knows how to take action and what to do with the information they've received. But really, you know, the best way I can describe soft skills is really that people management and the empathy that really comes in helpful into UX. Um, let's see. How do you push yourself to get paid your worth when shifting from an arts and graphic design to UX design or product design? Um, Regardless of what your expenses are, again, know your worth. I've been in the design industry. No matter how I've applied those skills, I've been in the design industry for almost 20 years. And again, I have director on my title. I'm not going to lowball myself. You know, again, even if I wasn't believing my worth, I had people around me that helped me, you know, realize that that's, you know, that's way too low for the experience you have. So it doesn't matter about your expenses. That has nothing to do with anything. As my sister likes to say, that what does that have to do with the price of grain? It's about what you are worth and the expertise you bring to the table. So yeah, that's how I negotiated kind of my salary is figuring out what I bring to the table, knowing your value and really matching what that means. Whether, you know, like I mentioned to someone before, just because you're still working with internships, you have a lot of work that you've put together, that doesn't mean you're a junior. Think about mid-level. And sometimes it's just like looking at job postings of the higher levels that you may find intimidating and reading them over, and then you realize, wait a minute, I know more about this and I can do this. And, you know, I have a background in this. So that's kind of really how I was able to navigate that, but with a lot of support from the folks around me, friends, as well as you know folks from my cohort, and you know as that expands into the work with my mentees have. If I don't believe in myself, how can I help my mentees believe in themselves? So that was like another thing that has helped me understand my value and not lowball myself. And at the end of the day, when you're doing negotiations, go high. You can always negotiate, but know where your cutoff point and be willing to walk away, which is very scary sometimes, but it's better than selling yourself short because if you start selling yourself short there, then it'll be hard to kind of
Oh,
come out of that.
this time working.
Um, oh, I have more messages. Let's see. Any other questions? For me, it helps me to understand soft skills or something that has to do with qualities in your character. Absolutely. Absolutely. Being an honest individual, being open. I mean, honest doesn't mean telling your whole, you know, all your business, but it's being, you know, authentic. If someone asks you a question and you don't know, say you don't know, but are willing to help find the answer. Sometimes it comes to did I start my job in kindergarten? Thank you so much. I turned 41 a couple weeks ago, but thank you. I appreciate that. Lauren, I do get that often. I have someone I'm working with the conference that I mentioned, UX y'all. He's always like, oh yeah, when you get to my age, I'm like, oh, I'm like 5 years older than you, but thank you. So it's always a fun thing. How do I continue to challenge myself in my current role? Um, I've taken this to heart from one of my coworkers, one of my PMs. It's, you know, it's better to sometimes ask for forgiveness than permission. So, being asked to do a wireframe again, somebody asks you, giving you solutions, take the opportunity to be like, I just got this. I'm gonna go talk to, Samaya, who submitted this support ticket that this needs to be done. Well, hey, Samaya, why does this need to be done? Let's talk about this. And, not being afraid to approach things being curious and not settling for the first answer when you ask why. Um, yeah, that's what I'll say about how I keep challenging myself. It's working in inter with that more human aspect to find solutions, which ends up putting me in strategy a little bit, which I'm learning to like very much, but also using that design thinking. So just being able to trust that I know something to be able to reach out when I need something from someone else and taking a risk and designing something that didn't no one asked for, and yet you solved the problem that they were trying to articulate. So sometimes it's just doing something that you think is a little bit better and seeing how it goes. Sometimes they notice, sometimes they're like, oh yeah, this is exactly what I was thinking. I was like, not really, but sure, 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 sure. If that helps me get buy-in and move forward, let's do it. I'm coming up on time. I don't want to make sure I don't go over. It is almost 5 o'clock on a Friday, so I'm being conscious of folks' time. Um, so Valeria, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Yes, so our volunteer application is actually closed for this year for UX Y'all, but I'll drop the links to the website for the conference as well as Triangle UXPA because you can sign up for the newsletters and that's how you know all of our information when we call for speakers, when we have events, when we post the volunteer call as well. So we literally just closed it about 3 weeks ago and we have a fully stacked team at the moment. It's a great group of volunteers. But yes, I will put those resources up and keep an eye on us as we kind of put more information out there in the world. Yeah, the newsletter is definitely the best way to keep up with what's going on in our area. By the way, Triangle UXPA stands for the Triangle here in Raleigh, which is Raleigh, Durham, and Chapel Hill. But we just don't only cover that area. We actually get submissions and folks volunteering and coming to events. Ooh, okay. Yeah. Would love to see you from Charlotte. We're also doing call for speakers, Valeria, if that's something you're interested in. So yes, that's kind of what is going on with UX Y'all and Triangle UXPA. For those in the area or not who are willing to travel, it is September 24th and 25th, coming up in the fall. It does have some time to go. But yeah, I'll drop those links in a little while. Any other questions? Oh, that's awesome. I'm seeing a lot of folks in the area. I went to
Amazing.
school once upon a time for graphic design and worked for a few graphic houses. That's awesome. And then went into teaching. I recently transitioned into UX and had someone tell me that because of ageism, I should leave anything that old off my resume. Your thoughts? Mm, ooh, I don't know. What do you think, Samaya? I don't know. That's a tough one.
So I always never put the dates of when I graduated from
Yeah,
school
yeah,
just because no one needs to know my age. Some applications do ask very specifically for your age, and then there's no way getting around it because it's a required field. But at least in the resume, I don't put it. Um, and unless asked specifically, I try not to disclose my age. And then in terms of your work experience, I always recommend showcasing the last 5 to 10 years of most recent work experience, but not going over that because then people can start to guess your age. Um, so always just 5 to 10 years of the most relevant experience is kind of the rule of thumb. But again, I'd have to take a look at your resume personally and see to give more specific, personalized feedback.
And I would add to that, is there a way to weave in some of that previous work experience into that, like, 4 or 5 more most recent? So that's something that can help massage that as well. But yeah, definitely that was one of the biggest points. Don't put the year you graduated, just what degree do you have, and where you went, if you want as well.
Wow, but thank you guys for staying
Yeah.
on this call at 5
Maybe.
p.m. Eastern on a Friday. I think 2 p.m. Eastern Pacific time for the folks joining from the West Coast. This has been really great. We have really enjoyed your curiosity, your empathy, and supporting our speakers, asking them lots of really thoughtful and curious questions. Some of them were really great questions that really made the whole group think and really brought everyone together. So I really applaud your ability to ask questions and stay curious and learn. I do realize that some folks were only able to join late. And so what I'll be doing is after this, over the weekend, I'll send an email to all folks who registered for the conference. So you have access to all the presentations in video format and you can catch up on anything that you missed. I'll also share some resources with UX Woman. So our Slack channel, jobs board, you name it. There's both free and paid resources, and I'll share them all. But thank you so much. And Angelina, thank you so much for wrapping us up. We have a really excited audience who kept you going
I know, they're
throughout the day.
amazing.
So thank you.
Thank you all.
Great. See you all. Thank you so much.